Today, Gary interviews CallForce and Teem founder Cory Pinegar about his journey in building not one, but two companies from the ground up. This podcast is made by marketing entrepreneurs for marketing entrepreneurs. If you love creating something out of nothing and are hopelessly addicted to growth, you're one of us. Stop by each week to hear conversations with leading marketing entrepreneurs where we drill down on things like how to start and double your business, develop systems that can scale, and why success starts with who you are as a person. And after the episode, head over to the Agency Growth Engine server on Discord to talk shop and swap stories with the rest of our community. Let's dive in.
All right, my friend Cory, we are live. Thanks so much for coming on. I am really excited to talk with you today because you are just a wealth of knowledge. And I want to share with everybody really quick before I jump into my first question for you. If you're listening to this, please just leave a comment below. It really, really helps out. And I know you're going to listen to this and you're going to go, no, I'm doing something else. I'm not going to do it. Please just go and leave a comment. Don't make me beg you. All right. So now, Cory, I'm gonna quickly try to describe what you do, and I know there's a lot more to it, but I'm gonna just quickly move through it. And number one, you have CallForce, and CallForce is in essence a third-party company that helps people in the dental industry answer phone calls and kind of overflow. And then also you do a lot of other things for those offices as well to kind of help reduce the workflow inside of the offices. And you started that company from the ground up. You also started a company called Teem that you help people with virtual assistants and again kind of helping with the labor crunches and things like that, and have done a great job. I've used both of these companies and they're both amazing. But you have that company, and then you also sit on a board of a marketing agency that has over 1,400 team members and thousands of clients. So what did I get right, or what did I get wrong, and what did I miss on that?
You nailed it. No, I am a lover of business and just really passionate about building a better tomorrow. And I think most of what I encompass my day-to-day is driven around driving efficiencies in non-complex scenarios where we're not fully efficient. And, there is the Elon Musks out there who are much more intelligent than I could ever dream of being, where they are building rockets and building a much better 50 years from now future. I believe that there's really simple inefficiencies or lacks of knowledge people have, and our job is to fill that gap and to progress to building a better and simpler economy. So I'm a very simple entrepreneur. I'm not that smart, and I don't say that as like a joke or as a put me down, but I actually believe how simple my brain thinks allows me to solve problems in a more simple fashion. And sometimes we can make things more complex or more daunting than they should be. Because my brain thinks very A to B to C, it allows me to drive through sometimes steeper scenarios and solve problems that can be driven much more efficiently.
So let's start with Teem then, and I love that because I love solving problems that way and making. I think it's called the law of first principles, right? Like breaking things down. Like, is there a different way to do this? And so where did Teem come from? How did you develop that out of CallForce?
Yeah, so this is a really good question. So we have a insurance verification division at CallForce, and we had a meeting. Would have been over a year ago from today. And we pulled up the finances from the last month for that division, and we lost, I think, $40,000 or $50,000 on that service line. That was not working. And so we were driving the market for us mostly with U.S. and in-office labor. Mm-hmm. And we realized no matter how efficient we could make our team members, the numbers just couldn't work. Could we get to break even? Yes, but could we drive a 50 to 60% gross margin to drive that bottom line margin that mattered? No. And so kind of went back to the drawing board and realized that there is really talented people overseas that will work for a fraction of the rate. And the cool thing is, at the same time, we realized that though we're paying a fraction of the rate, what we're paying to them is top 25 or top 20% money for their country. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so we initially hired a small group of 2 or 3 and it went really well. And they caught on. Most of them had gone to or graduated from US universities. They were very fluent in English. And so we just started growing that team. We eventually built our insurance verification department to be profitable and to hit the margins that we were looking to hit. And then there were some conversations that I had outside of dental where people were like, hey, I need help filling this, or I need help filling this. And I'm sitting there going, wait a second, what we are just experiencing, other people could. And what's really interesting about business is businesses at the end of the day are doing something called knowledge arbitrage, where you know more about one specific sector than other people do. Like really business broken down, a marketing agency understands the fundamentals and reporting and tracking and building of marketing more than a typical SMB owner, where they have to have a very wide knowledge. Specific companies, such as an outsourced CFO group, come in and provide a well of knowledge in one specific vertical. And so I realized that most people look at the idea of hiring overseas, qualifying, paying for them, doing the legalities, and saying, well, it's kind of interesting, but I don't know how to do it. And since we had built it at CallForce, I thought it was a really interesting idea to say, well, let's do it. And we signed up our first customer. They signed up 22 team members. And that went really well. And what's been really interesting, I think the biggest thing that I've learned is the product market fit that we found, or the service market fit, was so in demand. We have been very fortunate to grow like a snowball. And at a rate much faster than CallForce has ever
That's
grown.
awesome.
And
it's it was birthed out of CallForce, right? So it's cool when something like that hits.
What I found so interesting is if you can spend the time to get your product market or service market fit down, I mean, it makes those headbutting experiences for much easier because you're solving the growth. And we were very fortunate to almost roll our way into a problem, but I really now am a big believer of take your time, do the due diligence, make sure there is a great product market fit. And if you nail that, then you're just nailing and scaling the systems going forward, or else you're constantly pushing forward, adding and gaining new customers, and almost plateauing.
Yeah, and full transparency, I've obviously watched you from a distance doing all the things that you're doing. It's been awesome to watch, but I've also used your services and it's went really, really well. And I've referred a bunch of people to you and they've all loved it and said, this is the most amazing thing ever. It kind of solves all the problems inside of the virtual assistant world, I guess you would call it. But a couple things inside of that I would love you to like touch on. So one of the things that I like that you really explained to me the first time we talked about this, as you were just starting to flesh this out, was, hey Gary, we solved the culture gap difference. And you guys did that in a very unique way. So could you kind of walk me through how it's different than just saying, oh, I hired some people in India or I hired some people in the Philippines? Can you walk through how you guys tackled that?
Yeah, I mean, again, we stumbled into a solution, to be totally transparent. To claim we're geniuses is wrong. But we engaged in a partnership with BYU, which is out of the state of Utah. And so the majority of team members that we hire have graduated and gone to a university. So they understand the nuances of the United States. They understand cultural differences or cultural norms, which are actually large issues when outsourcing in other parts of the world. A second thing that I think we were very lucky to fall on again is that the majority of our labor comes out of Argentina and Brazil, which is directly south of us. And so they align with the hours of US companies. So when you hire out of India or you hire out of the Philippines, which are great countries, our day is the middle of their night. And so it's a little more difficult to get people aligned and engaged in those jobs, or you're kind of working in shifts where you're not fully overlapping with each other. And so those two almost stumbled into solutions have made it much better. The final thing that I think we stumbled into is that outsourcing in India and the Philippines is very normal. When you hear of, oh, I've hired a virtual assistant, most people think of the Philippines. And because of that, we've noticed that in those countries, sometimes people hop job to job to job very frequently because they've built a culture of almost a gig economy. because there isn't a large outsourcing growth within Argentina or Brazil, we've found that when people are engaged in the job, they're really bought in for the long term, and we're not dealing with significant turnover or some of the culture that has been built in some larger, more outsourced areas.
Got it. That's really good. So could you share some numbers? Like how fast did you grow? Like when you decided, hey, I'm going to build this second company, how fast were you able to get off the ground? What are some financial numbers, whatever you're allowed to share?
No, I'm totally open. Business is not as we were discussing off air, business is not as sexy or perfect as people see. So what I share today, we've been very fortunate. I've also been involved in businesses that haven't worked or haven't got off the ground. So disclaimer, what we've seen at Teem is abnormal to the highest degree. But we have grown from zero in revenue starting in December 1st of 2021 to the end of last month doing over $200,000 a month in reoccurring revenue. So we're a little above or just about to cross the $3 million reoccurring revenue rate in the first 6 months of business.
Yeah, and you said
which is freakishly abnormal.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. And so you said that it was really accredited to the things that you stumbled into, but then also having that perfect product placement in the right market. Can you walk me through like how you identified your avatar and when you like how did you dial that in to be able to accomplish that?
I think what allowed us to also be so successful here, Gary, is a lot of learnings from CallForce.
Yeah.
There was a division that we had at CallForce where we managed custom teams. Mm-hmm. And it was the biggest pain in the ass. Like it taught me everything that I didn't want to do in business. And I'm really grateful because I actually think that's what's allowed us to grow quicker at Teem, where we came in and said, hey, we know how to help dental offices schedule. We'll give you a custom team. And that sounds great, but then you realize that it's not scalable. So if you want to be a boutique brand, you can have 40 custom agents, you can have 60 custom agents, but the idea that you can significantly scale every single month is not very realistic. And so what I learned is we did not want to manage the relationship. We did not want to train the team member. We're not coming in saying, hey, we'll train your team on how to be a marketer. We go out there and source the talent.
Yeah.
We'll find the best possible candidates. We'll then go to the hirer and say, hey, here are the best 3 candidates that we think are a good fit for you. Day one, when they start, they are yours as if you're training a new employee. You show them the systems, you manage them. You have a people success person in the background. So if you have a question, if the contractor has a question, there is someone to reach out to. They have access to LinkedIn Learning and Udemy and other platforms so that we can invest in them. But we didn't enter ourselves as a middleman in the relationship where then someone would say, hey, can you train them on PPC or SEO or doing graphic design in Canva?
Yeah.
It is not scalable. And we would become at fault for the quality of work oftentimes.
Yeah, exactly. So then how do you guys make money then? So if I'm coming to you and I'm hiring this person, how does that relationship work?
Yeah. So we get paid directly by the outside company. And so we are a vendor. And then we hold our team members as contractors. And so we make a slight edge on that in between. And then we have a couple software systems that allow us to manage in-country compliance, tax compliance, background checks, and a few other things that are very difficult to do as a small business. We also supply all of our team members with credit cards that allow them to help deal with inflation and fluctuations in their currency. And so we do a few things that allow us to retain our team members. We allow team members, so though a company pays us once a month, the team member can actually emergency request their funds 30 days in advance. So if they have an emergency where their home is in danger or they need to move somewhere else, or if they just need their payroll 5 days early, they can request that from us and it goes either into their bank account or they also have a debit card that holds US funds if they're trying not to deal with rapid rises and fluctuations in their local currency. So we've done a few things on our side that also make us more attractive and lucrative to the contractor to help them deal and manage their funds better.
Well, that's so cool. So yeah, and you're just really taking care of people at the end of the day, right? So you went and looked at, well, these people live in a country where inflation's like drastic, right? Like dramatic. And then you realize that, well, these guys aren't going to be successful if they don't have a home to work out of, right? Or if if they can't pay their internet bill, you can't do a lot of work. So you guys went in and solved that problem for them by giving them that credit card, which is amazing. I didn't know that you did that. How often are they having to use that?
To be honest, I couldn't tell you. We use an outside partner who helps us facilitate our financial transactions. But when they go into our payment platform, they can request a debit card. They can request emergency funds earlier. If they request it just 5 days in advance, they don't pay extra fees. They're not paying us money, but we're trying to better a relationship with them, and we, hold them responsible for those funds. I don't know how often those are used, but as part of the recruiting process, that's a large part of the picture we're painting, that you can take better care of your family, and you also have access to financial systems and avenues you may not have had.
Yeah. And so how do you deal with, I'm going to totally change gears with you. How do you deal with people who are like, well, you're taking away jobs from people in the United States? How do you slice that up? I have some thoughts around that, but I would love your thoughts.
So, that's a really interesting idea. Right now in the United States, people are predominantly coming to us because they can't find people. Mm-hmm. Now, if I'm being honest in my outlook, I think that's going to change over the next few months. Mm-hmm. There's also jobs in the United States that we're really good at, and then there's some areas that we're not good at. And there's some areas of labor that people in the U.S. actually just don't prefer to do.
Yep.
And a second thought, this may be right or wrong or controversial, I also believe in the world economy. I believe in the United States, but I believe that COVID did something really interesting to the world where it expanded our reach. Before, when you were hiring 50 years ago, you started a software company, you hired in your neighborhood and maybe 20 miles north, south, east, or west.
Exactly.
Over time, that expanded to, okay, we'll hire in the state and we'll have a couple satellite offices, or maybe we have a Chicago and an LA office. And then COVID took place. And before that, people were working remote. But people have seen that the idea of working remote is possible and that success can be driven. And so I'm a big believer that businesses generally hire in the United States right now because that's how they know how to hire. There's Indeed, there's Glassdoor, there's Monster, but there's not a ton of avenues for, well, how do I hire someone in Brazil? How do I qualify them? That's the way we actually view our business line at Teem. Our business and our motto is that we help businesses build their business without borders.
Yeah.
There's really talented developers and graphic designers in the Philippines, and there is amazing videographers in South America. So can we help businesses build a better business by getting better and more loyal talent in from all different parts of the globe, where then as a business, it's not, oh, I'm outsourcing or I'm hiring remote. It's put these candidates up against the people that are applying from Florida, from Ohio, and then take a look and make the best decision for your business. If your business is doing well and you believe you treat your people well, naturally the U.S. is going to move and grow forward as we access different resources in different parts of the globe. Just as cobalt isn't really mined in the U.S., it's mined in Africa. There's just different talent and different resources in other parts of the globe. And I think businesses who have the mindset of, I want to take advantage of that, build a better business where they are and will better the lives around those and all of the people around them.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Yeah. And what I've experienced personally, we had jobs that people didn't want to be hired for. And to your point earlier, like we couldn't make it profitable. We couldn't do the job that we needed to have done and do it in any kind of way that would make any economical sense. And not only that, when we put people in those jobs and we tried to, they didn't want to do it. Like they literally didn't want the job. And then we started working with people like yourself, and the people were super grateful, happy, like they loved the job. And it was a totally different mindset compared to what we were dealing with before. So I think every single job, every single thing inside of a business, it's just people's brains are changing. The way we're thinking is changing, and the opportunities out there are definitely changing. So where do you see Teem going over the next 6 months and then into next year? Where are some of your targets?
We are continuing to grow quite rapidly. Right now, we have some aggressive end of quarter targets that we're trying to hit over the next 45 days. And our goal right now is to really define our systems and processes so that we can continue to scale. So we've brought in a couple operational leaders who are building our SOPs and systems so that we can be ahead of ourselves and that we can improve our client and contractor experience. I think we've got a good product market fit. We found some marketing channels that work very well for us. So the majority of our efforts are how do we better the client and contractor experience? The longer the contractor stays with someone, the more the client enjoys and reaps reward.
Yeah.
Naturally, the marketing of that will move us forward. And so our job is to help deliver the most seamless and innovative experience. I believe naturally that will move us and grow us as a company.
So what's your 45-day target? What are you aiming for?
We are attempting to add 100 more contractors over the next 45 days.
Wow. Okay, so that's huge. And then what will that represent? So if you're at 200,000, what will that represent to the company?
That will push us close to $4 million annually.
Okay, so substantial jump there. And then what did you have to figure out in the other countries to be able to get these recruits? Did you have connections already, or was it something that you had to go in and learn from the ground up?
So I went to BYU. I never graduated. And so I had connections through the BYU Pathways program, which is BYU's version of, there's people who are in Argentina and Brazil that want to attend BYU. So we connected with some leaders from BYU Pathways, and they helped open the network. We've now hired enough people where we have a pretty substantial network where we can push out jobs ourselves. But we do still do a lot of recruiting through the BYU Pathways network, which is about 19,000 graduates.
Wow. Okay, that's huge. And then what are you? I know the area of Utah. Right now, you're in a hotel. So every time we talk, you're in a hotel. You're always traveling, and I know that's part of the journey that you're on right now. But I know you're located in a place in Utah that is kind of booming with technology. Could you tell me a little bit about what's going on there and just what you're seeing in Utah happening?
Yeah. So our corporate headquarters is in Lehi, Utah. So Podium is there, ClickUp is there, Divvy is there, Bill.com is there, Snapchat is there, Tesla is there, Weave is there. So there is a ton of early stage and quick growing venture capital technology companies in the Lehi area. They've termed it Silicon Slopes instead of Silicon Valley because of the slopes of Utah. And it is just growing very quickly. But we actually had a very large corporate office for CallForce, about 30,000 square feet, up until a few months ago, where we realized that we were flushing money down the toilet. It was harder to recruit.
Yep.
And we have pushed to a large remote model. So we have a really nice, very small corporate office with a ton of meeting rooms where we can bring our executive team in, collaborate, and communicate. So I'm not as embedded in the Silicon Slopes or Lehi scene as I used to be. The majority of my day-to-day really goes around how do we build quality, long-standing businesses, and there's great people to connect with in the Lehi area, but I actually spend the majority of my time now connecting with people all across the globe who bring really different and innovative thoughts.
Yeah, that's really cool. So tell me about some of the pain of, I totally get why going remote. We're 100% remote, and so I get the benefits of it, but it's not easy to just, hey, we're going remote, right? Like, and there's things that you don't know about working remote until you go through working remote. We've been doing it for years. So I always tell people we were remote before being remote was cool after COVID, right? We were remote pre-COVID. So we already had all our systems in place and all those kind of things. But again, we built them over years. When you made that transition, what were some of the pain points that you went through?
We went through a lot of IT issues. We went through how do you build a culture, a fun and engaging culture? You know, before we could have leaderboards up on the office and we could have a team movie day and we had a Coke machine and snacks and a ping pong table and a gym. You can't do those things anymore.
Yeah.
And if people don't turn their camera on when they come in to engage, it's kind of like talking to a brick wall.
Yep. That's one of our rules is like everybody's cameras is always on. So how long did it take to kind of turn that corner for you, for culture wise?
I think we're still getting it.
Yeah.
Like I think certain of our department leads are really good at engaging in a virtual manner. We had a meeting about this yesterday, and other people are learning to do it. I'm learning how to be more engaging and how to run a town hall, not with 100+ people in front of me, but with 100 little images.
Yeah. Yep.
And so I think we're just continuing to evolve and step up our game. And I spend a lot of my time reading now on how we can manage a remote first culture and how we can communicate and collaborate with the majority of our stuff done over the screen.
Yeah.
It's what allows me to travel, though.
Yeah.
Like the majority of people would think I'm on the road for work all the time. I am hopping from city to city, usually to play a round of golf after work or to check out a new museum. It allows me to enjoy the aspects of life I do, but it also brings me to work the next day really much more happy and engaged because it allows me to live a life while also still being fully invested and behind the company.
That's so cool. Yeah. One of the things that we did that really helped us as we grew was we did a weekly pulse score of every single team member. And we just had, what they ranked. And we also, something that we did that was, I think it was different, was we asked them, how are they feeling on that pulse score scale of 1 to 5? How they're feeling professionally and personally, right? We asked them to blend those things together because they're working in their bedroom. So you can't really separate it, right? It's like, oh, I'm doing really good professionally, but my home life stinks, or vice versa. Like that doesn't exist anymore because you're literally sitting in your bedroom, which is your office, which is next to your nursery, right? For your baby or whatever. And so having that has really helped us to be able to communicate. And we tell people like, we're okay with whatever you put for your score. We just want to be able to support you. So if your baby's up sick all night, it's probably going to impact you the next day. And normally in an office setting, like if you and me are in an office setting and you were up all night with a sick baby, I can see the bags under your eyes. I can see that you're struggling. And I naturally, without even saying anything, I kind of pick up the slack for you. And what I notice virtually is that you don't get that. No one's picking up my slack unless I communicate it. So we've gotten really good at putting in a pulse score every single week. And then I own it, right? This is one of the numbers that I personally own is how's everybody doing? And then when somebody's struggling, we go and talk to the managers, we talk to the directors and say, hey, they're struggling. What can we do to support them? And what can we do to help them? And so everybody knows that we're always looking at those pulse scores from a support standpoint. And that's really helped boost our ENPS score, and which is an employee net promoter score. For those listening, I know you know what that is, but for those listening, and it's been really, really impactful in just offering genuine support to people who are working from their bedroom. So are you doing anything like that, or is there anything else that you're thinking about adding like that from the books you've been reading?
The idea of a pulse score is really interesting. I even think for me, I've worked on showing up more authentic. And so this isn't as big of a picture or as deep as what you guys are doing, and really is a great tool that we should be implementing ourselves. For me, it's been if I can show up authentic, our team members are more willing to. If everything's all roses.
Define that for me. Like, just walk through. Like, give me an example of what showing up authentic for a CEO of a startup or CallForce looks like.
Yeah. So I think for a long time, I felt. So I'm 28, and leading hundreds of people at a young age, you almost feel like you need to be the guy showing up in like the blue suit coat and the white shirt to be a little older than you are, and to be the mature one who doesn't crack jokes in the room, and so that you're the sage-like figure that most people envisioned for a long time the CEO to be. And I think I faked it for a long time, where I was formal and always engaging. And as I've gotten older and just done this for a longer time, I realized I'm a better leader when I'm me. When I have the horrible jokes that I still have, and when I acknowledge that I had a really bad day, or I can shoot the breeze about golf and we can start the meeting 2 minutes late. Like before, I was like, all right, it's 10:30, we start on the dot. Like I had this idea that like, since I read books, about Warren Buffett or other people who were, maybe a hard ass leader at some point, I was like, if I button up and if I show up to work, people are really going to respect me. And I've realized that I'm way more happy and way more authentic with my team members if being Cory.
Yeah.
And if I drive that, people drive that, and we just enjoy each other's time, and we're enjoying each other's time, we're aligned and we're working towards a common goal, that's when we've really moved forward as a team.
I love that, man. So it's really being vulnerable, right? Like it's just being yourself and being vulnerable. And I think every leader goes through that, where we struggle, where we think we have to be something. And it's interesting, when we're younger, we want to be older, right? But then when we get older, we want to be younger. And so it's like this fake it till you make it. And I think there was a time like that was taught, right? Like just go do it and then just fake it, right? And what I learned about that, because I went through that stage, fake it till you make it, was no one came and helped me because I was faking it. So they're like, oh, you're fine. You don't need help. So I got no support. I also ended up in weird places, right? Like I'm like, why am I here? And why is this the situation? If I would have just been straightforward, I wouldn't have ended up in this weird place. And when I started just telling people like, hey, this is what I'm really good at. This is what I stink at. I'm bad at like 4 billion things. And I'm horrible at that. I started to realize that people started coming around and helping me with the direction that I was moving. And that was amazing. And I appreciate you just being so real about that. And I think that if I could have started earlier, it would have saved me a lot of headaches, right? It would have saved me.
The headaches that all of us look back at, but that's what makes it so much better today. Because if we hadn't experienced the moments of faking it until we make it, or falling in the pit holes where the company doesn't grow for a quarter or two, or you lose your biggest customer. Like if you hadn't been through that, is the sweetness of success really that good? And that's why I think the joy really is in the journey.
Yeah. So here's another, like a more of an entrepreneur question for you. So we all kind of have this dream, like building a business, right? And when we're an entrepreneur, we grind. And then you build what you want. And then you start to learn how to build like your schedule the way that you want it, and dealing with the things. And like to your point, you're traveling and those kind of things. When did you reach that point that you're like, this is what I want and I got it? Or are you still working towards that?
From an entrepreneurial standpoint,
yeah,
I don't think I'd ever be satisfied, which is a deadly answer.
Yeah.
And it's not like there's a certain amount of cash or a number of employees. I love the idea of building a solution.
Yeah.
Like that is the addiction that I have of, is there a problem and can we fix it and can we scale it? And I love the idea of, I'm not often fascinated by the entrepreneurs who grow a company really quickly and sell it in 3 to 5 years. I think it's cool.
Yeah.
It's definitely not the lifestyle that I'm interested in. I'm really fascinated by the sage-like people that are chairman of their board at 50 or 60 years old and run a small conglomerate of very large companies, where you've built long-standing, healthy brands and that they're self-sustaining.
Yeah.
Where you can step away for a couple weeks and you've got a COO, a CFO, and even sometimes a CEO who run the organization. That's the type of healthy business that I'm fascinated by, where you can live your life and you're not checking your phone at 9 o'clock at night because you're like, oh, customer X, Y, and Z is ticked off. What am I going to do?
Yeah. Yep. I love that, man. So you also sit on the board. So speaking of sitting on the board, you just sparked this. I know you sit on the board of a marketing company, a big marketing company. Tell me a little bit about that, what you do there, and again, whatever you're allowed to share.
Yeah. So I am mostly responsible over advising. I actually don't sit on our board. I sit on our advisory role, or sit in an advisory role where I help lead our retail healthcare acquisitions. So we are looking at marketing technology pieces. We are looking at strategic alliances that are more deep in verticals. So there's areas that we're really strong as a company in legal, in HVAC, in franchise, where we have thousands of customers and we've built out robust products and services. There's areas such as in the retail healthcare world, chiropractic, dental marketing, where we're not as deep. And so we look at strategic pieces of technology that we could look at acquiring, key people that could build and lead our teams, and then also access to the markets that help us accelerate forward quicker.
That's awesome. Any advice to somebody who's starting off a marketing agency or they're at $100,000 a month or $50,000 a month? Any advice that you'd give them on scaling and growing a business?
I don't know if I'd have marketing specific advice because I really haven't scaled an agency for myself. So I don't want to speak from a tower when I've never never actually built that. But
Or just any business, any entrepreneurial starting out, early on.
Yeah, no, I think what I find fascinating is nail your product and service. It's so much more enjoyable. I am naturally gifted in the sales and marketing aspect. Like if I look at what I'm good at that. I'm the last person you'd want to give a to-do list to. Like legitimately probably the last person. And so I've realized that over time, but it's really fun to go sell something, but then you're going to be suffering the ramifications of selling ahead of yourselves or selling bigger than yourselves in 3 to 4 months.
Yeah.
And as a salesperson, getting hammered by your existing customers every single day for something that hasn't happened is not fun.
Yeah.
And so what I would encourage is spend the time to build the right products and systems, over deliver. And then what's really fun is you're getting email intros from your current customers to new existing customers. You're selling them and the business is growing. I'm not as much addicted to sales and marketing. I'm addicted to growth. And I've found that nailing your operational parts of your company is really what drives the growth. Most people think it's sales and marketing, that is forced or unorganic growth where you are beating the drums to build awareness, which is what you have to do at the beginning.
Yeah, you have to do that. Yeah, you just hit our... go ahead.
But when you really nail it, when you really nail your operations, when you've got the right people, it is a snowball that even can encapsulate you sometimes. You're not beating the drum. The snowball is running ahead of you. And that's where you've built a business and brand, not based on yourself, but based on the solution and the problem that you're solving. And that's fun.
It is so much fun. It's fun. It's exhilarating. It's hard at times, right? But it is once you experience it, it's where you want to get back to. So that's awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming on today, Cory. And you actually hit our tagline of the podcast is addicted to growth. And I think that's the one common theme with entrepreneurs is like, we're not going to arrive. I don't know any number, like to your point of when I'm going to arrive to where I want to go. I just want to keep growing and I want to keep learning and I want to keep adding new things. So I know you're the same way. I love it every time we get to talk and I really appreciate you coming on. Last question for you. How can people find you if they want help with their businesses or they want to hire some new people? How can people reach out to Teem and get a hold of you?
So Teem's website is hireteem.com, hireteem.com. And people can also connect with me on LinkedIn. I may not be the most responsive. I'll be totally transparent. I'm not super quick sometimes, but I love connecting authentically with people where we can talk about the struggles of growing a business and the connections to our personal lives. I really thrive off those type of conversations. So always happy to be a listening ear and a helpful hand. And Gary, really appreciate all that you're doing within the dental industry, but really what you're doing on the entrepreneurial side and being authentic and the way that you treat your people is impressive.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. Same to you. And thanks so much for coming on and taking this time with us today.
Thanks, everyone.